Welcome to NPR One in the Morning. I'm Layla Falden, host of NPR's Morning Edition. And thanks for starting your day with us. Keep listening for the best stories and podcasts from the NPR network.
Let's try to look at reality behind a political campaign story. Former President Trump's campaign famously talked about immigrants in an Ohio town, and then they talked about Haitians in Pennsylvania, in a town called Charleroi. Oliver Morrison of our member station WESA visited that town and found there is a story, though it's a little different.
Weeks after Trump called out Haitian immigrants in Ohio, he called out the Haitians in Charleroi.
The housing market is destroyed. Crime is rampant. The jobs are taken by migrants illegally imported to our countries.
He made those remarks at a campaign rally just an hour away from Charleroi. 3 days before, the town's Republican leaders held a rally about what they said was the more pressing concern. The town's historic glass factory had just been slated to close at the end of the year. Danielle Byrne, a worker at the factory and a union rep, spoke at the rally.
If this takes place, it'll devastate the town. Not only that, but 300 hard-working people will lose good-paying jobs.
The glass plant makes the popular Pyrex cookware, which the Corning Glass Company started manufacturing in Charleroi before World War II. Byrne met her husband at the plant, and her grandfather worked there for 50 years.
Growing up just 3 streets up a block from the factory at 12 o'clock every day, when the Corning blew their lunch whistle, my grandfather would reset his watch or the clocks in the house because there was no other time but Corning time, and it was always right.
Today, 1 out of every 4 people in Charleroi lives in poverty, and the town's biggest employer is now 4th Street Barbecue, a frozen food manufacturer that makes things like breakfast sandwiches and breakfast bowls. The company's CEO, Chris Scott, says frozen food companies hire a lot of foreign-born workers because there aren't enough Americans applying. And recently, that's meant hiring Haitian immigrants in Charleroi, a number of whom were putting finished bowls into boxes on a recent day.
We have 3 bowl lines, about 50 people in this room. We'll make somewhere in the vicinity of 250,000 bowls a day out of this room alone.
4th Street Barbecue ran into a problem during the pandemic as demand picked up. Owner Dave Barb wanted to hire nearly 1,000 workers to fill orders that would end up on the shelves of Walmart and Aldi. But Charleroi and most of the small valley towns nearby have been losing population for decades. Even hiring a single mechanic was a challenge, Barb said.
We offered $30 an hour, and we offered a $1,000 signing bonus. And I had 1 applicant. I had 2, actually. The other guy didn't show up for the interview.
So Barb reached out to other food companies who told them about staffing agencies. And with the help of those agencies, Barb started to bring in immigrant labor. The company ended up hiring workers from more than 3 dozen countries. Joseph Patrick Murphy is an immigration lawyer in Pittsburgh. In 2019, he started getting so many requests for legal help from Charleroi that he set up an office there every Sunday. He said Haitians started showing up 3 years later, and that accelerated when the Biden administration granted them temporary protected status that allowed them to live and work in the country.
You could quickly get them legal and quickly get them work permits, and they were able to get them. So that's what made them so desirable.
But since Trump's attacks on Haitians, both Murphy and Barb, the owner of 4th Street, say they have faced aggressive threats from residents. Scott, 4th Street CEO, say they're now making contingency plans after Trump threatened to remove Haitians from the country during a TV interview. Some of the Haitians in town have also become worried about their safety and legal status. Pierre Richard Montplaisir moved to Charleroi from Haiti and drives a forklift for 4th Street. He thinks many of his fellow Haitians will eventually move away.
Once they get money, they can pay or when they can buy or car, they just leave into the big towns like New York City.
Meanwhile, the glass plant in town announced this month that it was going to begin layoffs just before Christmas, despite some last-ditch efforts by politicians to save the plant. Kevin Keatner, one of the people who's set to lose his job at the plant, doesn't like that political attention has been diverted.
The Haitian issue, I don't believe, is really an issue. Yes, there's a lot of them. They're not causing any problems as far as we know.
And the future of Charleroi's biggest employer now, 4th Street Foods, could be in the hands of whoever wins the election. For NPR News, I'm Oliver Morrison in Charleroi, Pennsylvania.
Time now for My Unsung Hero, our series from the team at the Hidden Brain podcast. My Unsung Hero tells the stories of people whose kindness left a lasting impression on someone else. Today's story comes from Donald Kabara. In the spring of 2023, Kabara visited Washington, D.C. with family members, including his son Tim. On the last day of the trip, Kabara was scheduled to fly back home to Oklahoma, a trip that would begin with a ride to the airport on DC's subway system, the Metro. Well, after they arrived at the Metro station, Tim insisted on walking his father inside, but when they got there, Kabara wasn't sure which train to take to get to the airport.
So I approached the attendant, a middle-aged woman, and asked her for directions to the train to Reagan Airport. She told me to pass through the gates, take the escalator down, and go to the right, and the train should arrive there. So I gave my son one hug and a second hug, and he was standing next to me at her booth. So she saw that it was a special moment for me. And I went down the escalator and was waiting for my train, when all of a sudden my son appeared next to me. And I asked him, "What are you doing here?" He told me he
gap clearly with voters over 50. Vice President